Okay, we're going to get started. Our next talk is by Wendy Van Wynsberghe with Networks of Our Own. So it's a pleasure to invite her here to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, so I do hope you have some grace and forgiveness. Yeah, it's Sunday, because I'm replacing the talk internet background traffic, which has become networks of one's own. And I was told on Friday that I was going to present, so here. So I'm a member of Constant, and I don't know if you know this organization. We're based in Brussels, and I think the written definition is quite well written. So Constant is a non-profit artist-run organization based in Brussels and active since 1997 in the fields of art, media, and technology. Constant develops, investigates, experiments, and I think, terms like feminism, copyleft, free, libre, open source software are very essential to the project. We look at collective digital artistic practices. We organize something which is called work sessions, which are transdisciplinary work on specific themes, and there are 2 work sessions a year on these specific themes. To find more about Constant, you can subscribe to the newsletter. Right. Okay. So what I'm going to try here is it's a bit risky, because I'm going to show you a hardware/software project. And I always say that software and hardware is like pets, kids. They can be unpredictable and not behave as you want them to behave. So bear with me also, because this is a bit of an improv conversation. I could not set this up with this super robust router, blah, blah, blah. I borrowed a Raspberry Pi, and it is now plugged in over there next to our videographer. And so for the people in the room who have a computer, I invite you to come and join the network. You can do this in 2 ways. This is the this presentation was hidden. You can join us by basically joining the Radical Networks network, ping etherbox.local. Get the IP address, and as you can see, you stick it into your browser. And then you arrive. Yes? Sorry? Yeah, the password, I forgot. Sonic Vibrations 18. Yeah. Somebody can type that, so who was typing here can join my presentation. One word. Yeah. You can also connect to it a lot faster through the Etherbox as well, but Etherbox, I mean, it's a Raspberry Pi, so let's be gentle with it and use the router of Radical Networks that will happily do the IP stuff for you. So where do you arrive? You arrive here. And why do you arrive here? Because we're going to document what you can type whatever you want together. And so I go to Etherpad, and we're going to create a new document. What should we call it? Should we? What? Internet background? Not internet background. So, yeah. Radpad, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, if you're connected, yay. Okay. So please type. And if you want to talk with each other instead of listening to me, just go ahead. Okay, so back to the presentation. Yeah. So networks of one's own. Episode 1, Etherbox. So this is a paranodal periodic publication that is itself collectively written in a network. Each of the episodes is thought of as the release of a specific software stack, contextualized in its specific practice. The series aims to document a series of tools, experiences, ways of working that are diverse in terms of their temporality, granularity, and persistence. And now I'm quoting Michael Murtaugh, for those who know him. Like the old adage of the Perl community, there's more than one way to do it. This project is about really being heterogeneous in tools and in practices, and ultimately foregrounding the inherent sociality of software. So, what is this Etherbox thingy over there? So basically, it is a project that was mostly used for collective documenting in a local network. And as you can see, so I'm connected to the Etherbox, but the Etherbox is connected to the internet. And so you can work locally and happily type together. And if your network is stable, you can also go outside. And Etherbox is a kind of assemblage of all kinds of boxes. So there's an Apache web server on there. There's Etherpad Lite on there. Pandoc, which is for conversion of documents. ImageMagick, which is for conversion of images. And something called EtherDump, which kind of converts these pads into more static documents. So I'm now going to give you, so we can have a look at, oh, not a lot is happening on the RadPad. A lot more was happening on my presentation. Okay. So I've said a lot of, ooh, yeah. Oh yeah, I could, but it's, oh yeah, oh, wrong. What have I done? Thank you. Voila. Okay. So this documenting project has these pads, and these pads get dumped. And so, as you can see, here's some pads I made earlier. And you can go to the pad itself, so you can go back and type together. But it's also, it creates a diff and static HTML. So that's what happened on the, here's one I made earlier. The pad is very self-reflective. The box, Etherbox, is very self-reflective. So it really shows its own logs, its own make files, and there's also spaces for you to drop images or other files too. So if you're in a collective in a conference and you want to and you're writing together, you can also, oh, here's the PDF, or here's the sound, or here's the images, and you go to this folder. As I say, it's quite self-reflective, so the guide is really the technical guide of what it is, how you get there, how you write, how you shut it down, don't shut it down, please, how you navigate, and then it really goes into detail on its flexibility, on its malleability, and how you install it, how you integrate it in your own network, etc., etc. How you can make PDFs out of the pads, for example. in this idea of self-reflection, we have the manual, where it says more about the nature of the project and okay. So I think it's important to say, scroll. I thought of doing regular slides and then I abandoned it. I said I should use the pad to talk about the pad and the pad. Where does this project partially come from? So in 2000 something, 10, 11, I forgot. Constant organized Verbindingen Junctions 14, and the title was Are You Being Served? And it was about this relationship of you using servers and services and how you relate to that. And during that event, a feminist server manifesto got written. I'm going to have a little drink now. And so we could say that a feminist server is situated and has context and is a part of an ecology of practices. It's run for and by a community that cares enough to make the server exist. It builds on the materiality of software, hardware, and the bodies gathered around it, opens herself to expose processes, tools, sources, habits, patterns, does not strive for seamlessness. Talk of transparency too often signals that something is being made invisible. Avoid efficiency, ease of use, scalability, and immediacy because they can be traps. Knows that networking is actually an awkward, promiscuous, and parasitic practice. Is autonomous in the sense that she decides for her own dependencies. Radically questions the conditions for serving and service. Experiments with changing client-server relationships where she can. Treats network technology as part of a social reality and wants networks to be mutable and read-write accessible. Does not confuse safety with security and takes the risk of exposing her insecurity. Tries hard not to apologize when she's sometimes not available. So, yep. So here I'm back in the manual, and I will now jump to. So I talked about networks of one's own. Of course, this is a reference to the writing of Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own, and this Etherbox device in its locality and specificity is like an iteration of what a network of one's own could be. Sorry. So yeah, we could do this. So I don't know if anybody knows Etherpad or pads in general. So this is a bit the timeline of pads, and it was this launched in 2008 with some former Google employees. Etherpad was worked on, and all of a sudden, boom. A year and a little bit later, Etherpad is bought by Google, and but Google released the source code under an Apache license, and then so the Etherpads were online. You could use them, but in 2010 they said, "Shut down, bye bye." After 2010. There were Etherpads. There was pirate pads. There was other pads. I forgot their name. And there was also another version of because Etherpad was this really clunky, resource-heavy thing. And so Etherpad Lite was developed. And yeah, so this is a bit the history of Etherpad. And what I wanted to show you was this. She's showing me 5 minutes. I'm doing okay. Thanks. So this has been used, again, like I said, it's something quite local, it has an artisanal feel to it. It's been used under different contexts. There was an event called Relearn about how you can teach teach each other things, not in a school way. There's a platform by open source publishing which is called Etherbox, which is very related to this, where you can do really more design in the browser that then makes documents. There's a project called Biblioteca, some images. Yeah, and they heard the book. And so I talked about verbinding injunctions, the rise of the botnet, so all these kind of different versions of this little tool. And it's sometimes really internal, sometimes people ask to use it. And so, yeah, why am I here now with this box? It's because, so it has become an image, so an ISO you can download, and it runs quite quickly. Like I said, I had to improvise, so I just took the SD card and I plugged it in, and then I plugged it into power, and it worked. But there's all kinds of ways of changing this configuration, and so for the questions afterwards, which I do have 2 helplines over there in the public who have used the Etherbox in other ways or have installed it differently. So yeah, I was going to show you who worked on it. Voila. Some people you perhaps know or not. And that's me. And so all of this information is on the very easy to remember URL and super easy to type, networks of one's own constantvzw.org. And it's basically everything which is on the box is on there. So there's this loop. Yeah, and I'll have a look at yeah, so you have these, oh yeah, voila, somebody uploaded an image. We can see what happened. So that's the image of the image. And I don't know if much happened on the pad. Oh yeah, so the RAD pad is still being digested by Etherdump, so slowly it will become something else. So yeah, voila. It's slowly being dumped. So it's also every half hour the Etherdump happens and is put on the pad itself again. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. You can. We can. Oops.
We can open it up to questions.
Thank you for getting this out there. This is really cool. And we were just talking about it yesterday. Like, where is the equivalent to this, which is not Google Sheets, and it's like in front of us? So fantastic. The question I had for you was, for Etherdump, the actual exporting thing, what the formats that it spits things out as?
Do you want to repeat it?
Yeah. Yeah. What does Etherdump dump to? Is it just HTML or is it something else?
No, it dumps to.
To get you on the mic.
Oh, that's the GitLab. What did Michael say? Not much. So that's where in Dutch we say, ik val door de mand. I drop through the basket. Yeah, I'll helpline number 1 rule. Thank you very much.
So the formats it spits out are either plain text or HTML. Cool. And based on this, the whole Etherbox, like it has a few cron jobs and make files that, for example, turn the pads into styled HTMLs like this, or that can with what's this other software you mentioned, Pandoc, can be converted into PDFs. Yeah.
Okay. Can I pass it to anyone with a question? Did anyone raise? Any questions? Anyone in the back? Yes? Okay.
How many people can use this before the pie starts to glow red and like not work?
Yeah, I think Roel, I'm gonna ask you again because you were there. And no, there was one project where there was a big crash, but I don't know why. Yeah.
How many people are on it now?
I have no idea. You have no access? No, apparently, have you tried connecting to, not to Radical Network, but to Etherbox? Can you try that? Because apparently with the pinging, and that could be a problem. And like I said, normally you do a setup with a proper router and equipment, you know, and not a borrowed cable and a borrowed Raspberry. Oh yeah, thanks. So the documentation which is on here is also in here, and I think we're going to sell them for the symbolic amount of €2 to be able to reproduce new versions. And if you're interested in having the image as well, this is then 12. Sorry? No, I thought about it, but I decided now. It's super straightforward, I hope.